Welcome to the Science Pulse. The first crack in reality is always subtle, a flicker at the corner of vision, a whisper of déjà vu, the sensation of reliving a moment already lived. The brain hesitates, unsure if what unfolds before it is truly happening, or merely a shadow of memory replaying itself. For centuries, philosophers, mystics, and scientists alike have asked a question that refuses to rest. What if this world, this solid ground beneath our feet, these faces we love, the passing of time itself, is nothing more than a dream? Every night, when the curtain of consciousness falls, we enter strange worlds built entirely within the mind. In these dreams, physics bends, the dead return, and impossibilities feel unquestionable. Only upon waking do we laugh at their absurdity. Yet how different is waking life, when we too rely not on raw reality, but on the fragile interpretations of a brain locked inside a skull. Modern neuroscience reveals a staggering truth. Our brains never see the world directly. They stitch together fragments of light, sound, and sensation into a seamless illusion. Like an artist painting reality in real time, the brain does not simply record existence, it creates it. If that is true, then we live inside a simulation already, not one built by alien supercomputers, but one crafted within the folds of our own neuron. This is the story of that engine, the story of how the brain manufactures reality, why it dreams, and how, in its most mysterious moments, it forces us to question whether there is a difference between waking life and the dream we call real. Reality presents itself as firm and immovable, the solidity of a wall, the familiar weight of our own bodies, the voice of someone we love. All of it seems to declare itself as undeniable truth. Yet beneath this confidence lies a quiet deception. For the reality we trust is not reality itself, but a construction. It is a veil, spun by the brain, delicate and shimmering, that covers a world we can never touch directly. Every breath we take, every glance at the sky, every sound that enters our ears is first filtered, translated, and stitched together by the most complex simulation engine known, the human mind. The brain does not live in the world as we imagine it. It is locked in silence and darkness, encased within the skull, connected to reality only by fragile channels of sense. The eyes collect light, but only a thin band of it, a sliver in an endless ocean of waves. The ears capture pressure changes in air, and nothing more. Skin receives the push of molecules. Taste buds register chemicals. The nose samples scents drifting in from beyond. That is all. From these meager signals, stripped of context, stripped of certainty, the brain builds the illusion of a world rich with color, sound, texture, and meaning. We call this illusion reality, but the more carefully we look, the more fragile it becomes. Take vision, our dominant sense. We believe we see the world as it is, yet sight is riddled with absences. Each eye carries a blind spot where the optic nerve pierces the retina. In that region, there are no receptors, no sight. And yet, you never notice a hole in your vision. Why? Because the brain fills the void, painting in what it guesses should be there, smoothing the absence so seamlessly that you remain unaware of the deception. The very act of seeing is an act of hallucination, a controlled, useful hallucination that matches just enough of the outside world to keep us alive. Even beyond this blind spot, the eye itself receives only fragments. The edges of vision are blurry, indistinct, a shifting haze of motion and light. You do not notice the blur because the brain hides it. You believe you see a clear, continuous world, but in truth, you only see a narrow tunnel of detail. Everything else is painted in from memory, prediction, and habit. Look quickly around the room, and you will feel that the whole scene is sharp and continuous. Yet at any instant, your eyes focus on only a pinprick of detail, while the rest is illusion, and illusions do not stop at sight. They thread through every sense. A stick plunged into water appears bent. The horizon swells the moon to impossible size. A faint rustle in the dark makes the heart pound, though it may be only wind. The brain is quick to impose patterns where none exist, to interpret shadows as threats, to turn coincidence into familiarity. These are not flaws, but features. Evolution shaped perception not to reveal the world in its truth, but to render it in a way that serves survival. We do not need accuracy. We need usefulness. And so our brains give us not reality itself, but a simplified model, a virtual reality tailored for survival on a fragile planet. Time itself, which we imagine as the most solid of all, is no less fragile. Neuroscience suggests that we do not perceive time as it flows, but as it is edited. The brain collects events in pulses, stitching them together into a story. Glance quickly at a clock, and the second hand seems to freeze. This is the illusion of chronostasis, the brain stretching an instant to make sense of the eye's sudden movement. In danger, time slows to a crawl, each second drawn out into eternity. In boredom, hours dissolve into nothing. Time bends, expands, collapses, not in the world itself, but in the machinery of perception. The seconds we live by are not fixed points in reality. They are threads, woven by the mind, fragile as cobwebs. This fragility has been glimpsed in countless ways. In dreams, we slip each night into a world entirely built from within, and it feels as real as waking. In hallucinations, the veil of control falters, and the mind floods with visions, sounds, and voices that carry the weight of truth, though they spring from no outside source. In déjà vu, we are seized by the conviction of reliving the present, a glitch in the system that reminds us that memory and perception are not separate streams, but threads woven tightly together. Even in simple illusions, we see the seams of the simulation exposed. The ancients sensed this long before science confirmed it. Plato spoke of shadows cast upon the walls of a cave, mistaken for reality by those who could not see beyond. Eastern traditions describe the world as Maya, the cosmic illusion that conceals the deeper truth. Descartes imagined an evil demon deceiving his senses, leaving him unable to prove that anything existed beyond his own thoughts. Today, neuroscience tells the same story in a new tongue. The brain constructs reality. The world we inhabit is a model, not the thing itself. And so the question grows heavier. If all we ever know is this model, this fragile veil, how can we be certain that waking life is not another dream? How can we distinguish the simulation that sustains survival from a deeper dream that sustains existence itself? We cannot escape our own perceptions, yet we trust them blindly. But trust is not proof. Trust is habit, and habit may be the greatest illusion of all. The human brain has often been compared to a camera, a recording device faithfully capturing the world. Yet this comparison is profoundly misleading. A camera records passively, but the brain does not. It does not wait for reality to present itself like film waiting for exposure. Instead, the brain works in reverse. It predicts. It dreams forward into the world, creating a model of what it expects to see, hear, and feel, and then checks the incoming signals against its own imagination. Reality, as we experience it, is not a direct imprint of the world, but a negotiation between guess and evidence, between what is out there and what the brain believes must be out there. Neuroscience has revealed this in startling detail through the theory of predictive processing, sometimes called the Bayesian brain. At every instant, the mind is engaged in a cycle of expectation and correction. It projects a hypothesis about the next moment, the color of the wall, the weight of a coffee mug, the sound of a friend's voice. When sensory input arrives, it is not taken as raw truth, but as data compared against the prediction. If the input matches expectation, reality flows smoothly. If it deviates, the brain updates the model, adjusting its dream of the world. What we call perception is not reception. It is controlled hallucination, kept in line by the world's feedback. This becomes clear in moments of surprise. Walk into a room expecting silence, only to hear a sudden crash. Your heart leaps, your brain shocked not by the sound itself, but by the mismatch between prediction and input. The same is true in illusions. When you see two lines of equal length as different because of the way arrows are drawn around them, your brain is not failing, it is predicting. It has learned, through experience, that perspective usually means lines recede in space. The illusion exploits this expectation, and the prediction overrides the evidence. This predictive engine runs not only on the surface of perception, but deep in the rhythms of life. When you reach for a glass, your brain predicts the feel of its smooth surface, the weight that will tug against your muscles. If the glass is heavier than expected, the shock travels through your system, forcing a recalibration. Even hearing is prediction. When you speak, your brain predicts the sound of your own voice, muting it slightly so it does not overwhelm you. When someone else says the same word, it feels louder, sharper, because it was less predicted. In every sense, perception is less about the present than about the future the brain imagines. The most haunting demonstration of this lies in the phantom limb. When a person loses an arm or a leg, they often continue to feel it. The brain has not yet updated its model, and so the missing limb lingers in experience. Pain can grip fingers that no longer exist. Nails can itch in a hand that has been gone for years. The body itself is revealed as a simulation, a map drawn in the brain's cortex, projected onto the space of flesh. The model maps. When sensory input arrives, it is not taken as raw truth, but as data compared against the prediction. If the input matches expectation, reality flows smoothly. If it deviates, the brain updates the model, adjusting its dream of the world. What we call perception is not reception. It is controlled hallucination, kept in line by the world's feedback. This becomes clear in moments of surprise. Walk into a room expecting silence, only to hear a sudden crash. Your heart leaps, your brain shocked not by the sound itself, but by the mismatch between prediction and input. The same is true in illusions. When you see two lines of equal length as different because of the way arrows are drawn around them, your brain is not failing, it is predicting. It has learned, through experience, that perspective usually means lines recede in space. The illusion exploits this expectation, and the prediction overrides the evidence. This predictive engine runs not only on the surface of perception, but deep in the rhythms of life. When you reach for a glass, your brain predicts the feel of its smooth surface, the weight that will tug against your muscles. If the glass is heavier than expected, the shock travels through your system, forcing a recalibration. Even hearing is predicted. When you speak, your brain predicts the sound of your own voice, muting it slightly so it does not overwhelm you. When someone else says the same word, it feels louder, sharper, because it was less predicted. In every sense, perception is less about the present than about the future the brain imagines. The most haunting demonstration of this lies in the phantom limb. When a person loses an arm or a leg, they often continue to feel it. The brain has not yet updated its model, and so the missing limb lingers in experience. Pain can grip fingers that no longer exist. Nails can itch in a hand that has been gone for years. The body itself is revealed as a simulation, a map drawn in the brain's cortex, projected onto the space of flesh. The model matters more than the matter. Even our sense of self is shaped by prediction. In experiments where subjects wear virtual reality headsets and see a rubber hand stroked in time with their own hidden hand, many begin to feel that the rubber hand belongs to them. The brain, receiving synchronized signals, adjusts its model of the body. Ownership. This predictive dream reaches its height in language and thought. When someone begins a sentence, your brain races ahead, anticipating the words to follow. In reading, you often know the end of a phrase before your eyes arrive there. This is why a single typo can be overlooked. Your brain predicted the correct word and overwrote the error. Conversation, too, is a dance of predictions. We finish each other's sentences not as a trick, but as a natural extension of how the mind works. To live in society is to live in shared simulations, constantly predicting the intentions, emotions, and actions of others. And what of memory? It, too, is less a recording than a reconstruction, a prediction of the past. Each time we recall an event, we rebuild it from fragments, filling in gaps with expectation. The more often we recall, the more the memory drifts, shaped by present knowledge and belief. Eyewitnesses disagree not because they are careless, but because memory itself is predictive, a best guess at what once happened, not a fixed photograph. This view of the brain as a prediction machine reshapes the question of dreams themselves. For what are dreams but the purest expression of predictive processing, freed from the constraints of incoming evidence? In sleep, the sensory gates close, and the brain turns inward. It predicts wildly, weaving narratives from fragments of memory, emotion, and desire. In waking life, prediction is tethered to input. In sleep, prediction becomes the world. We accept the impossible because the brain, unchecked, has declared it so. Only upon waking do we realize how strange the dream was. Yet in truth, waking life is not so different. It is simply that ties together body, world, and time. In this view, we are not passive observers of a universe, but active creators, each mind running a simulation of reality that it never directly touches. The implications are unsettling. If all we know of the world is prediction, how much of reality do we ever truly encounter? Perhaps very little. The brain does not seek truth, but coherence, not reality, but survival. What we call reality may be nothing more than the dream that worked well enough to keep our ancestors alive. And we, still dreaming, continue to mistake the map for the territory. The fragile veil of reality, then, is not a static picture, but a dynamic projection. It is drawn anew each instant, tested against the world, corrected, and redrawn. It flickers with each heartbeat, as if the universe itself were being re-simulated at the speed of thought. And in those flickers lies the unsettling possibility that reality, as we know it, is less solid than we dare admit. It is a story told by the brain, endlessly rewritten, a dream tethered only lightly to what lies beyond. Each night, as the weight of waking life dissolves, we drift into a realm that blurs the boundary between illusion and reality. Dreams arrive like uninvited guests, weaving narratives beyond our control, building landscapes from scraps of memory and fragments of thought. In these nightly voyages, the brain reveals its deepest secret. It is not a recorder of reality, but a creator of it. And in the stillness of sleep, freed from the constant stream of external input, the brain turns fully to its own power, simulating entire worlds out of nothing but itself. The dream world has always been a source of awe and fear. Ancient civilizations treated dreams as portals, messages from gods, warnings from ancestors, glimpses into futures yet to unfold. Dreams were regarded as glimpses into other realms of consciousness, reminders that life itself might be a fleeting vision. Even in our modern age, with laboratories and brain scans replacing temples and rituals, the mystery has not faded. Dreams remain one of the purest expressions of the brain's ability to create a reality indistinguishable for a time from waking life. During the REM stage of sleep, when the eyes flicker beneath closed lids, the brain is ablaze with activity. Neurons fire with the same intensity as when awake. The prefrontal cortex, seat of logic and critical control, quiets its grip, while the limbic system, rich in emotion, surges with power. The result is a state of consciousness unbound by ordinary rules. Physics bends, time loops. The dead return. We fly, we fall, we change shape. We live entire lifetimes in the span of an hour, and none of it feels impossible until the moment we wake. Only then do we laugh at the absurdity. Yet in the dream itself, it is real as the ground beneath our waking feet. Why does the brain dream at all? Theories abound. Some scientists argue that dreams are the brain's rehearsal hall, a space to test scenarios without risk, a predator's pursuit, a leap across a dangerous gap, a confrontation with a rival. All can be played out safely in the theater of the mind, sharpening instincts for survival. Others suggest dreams serve memory, weaving the threads of the day into the fabric of long-term storage. Experiences fragment during sleep, then reappear stitched into strange narratives, reshaped but preserved. Still others view dreams as emotional regulators, a way to process trauma, grief, or joy by staging symbolic plays in the mind's private cinema. What unites these theories is the recognition that dreams are not noise. They are not meaningless static. They are the brain's own simulation engine, running at full power, creating worlds not from photons or sound waves, but from imagination alone. In this light, dreams are not separate from waking reality, but a continuation of it. The same predictive machinery that fills in the blind spot, smooths the flow of time, and builds the illusion of solidity is at work in dreams. Only now, unconstrained, unchecked, free to wander into the impossible. Lucid dreaming reveals the depth of this simulation. In rare moments, the dreamer realizes they are dreaming, and with that realization, gains the power to shape the world around them. Mountains rise at a thought. Gravity dissolves. Entire cities glow into existence, conjured from desire alone. To become lucid is to glimpse the truth that both dream and waking life are constructs, and the brain is capable of editing either. The difference is only that in waking life, the edits must conform to the steady feedback of sensory input. In dreams, the brain is its own source of evidence. The simulation is complete unto itself. But even outside of lucidity, the power of dreams can bleed into waking life. Artists have drawn masterpieces from their dreamscapes. Paul McCartney awoke with the melody of yesterday fully formed in his mind. The chemist Auguste Kekule saw the structure of the benzene ring in a vision of a snake devouring its own tail. Entire discoveries have emerged from the boundless creativity of sleep. In these moments, the boundary between dream and waking dissolves, and the brain's simulation spills from one world into another. And yet, dreams can also terrify. Nightmares grip us with primal force, drowning us in fear so vivid that waking brings relief as tangible as survival itself. These darker visions may serve a purpose, too. They may be the brain's rehearsal for danger, a way to prepare us for threats we cannot afford to face unready. Or perhaps they are reminders of the fragility of our control, warnings that the engine creating our reality is not always benevolent. What is most remarkable is how seamlessly the brain transitions between these states. One moment we lie in bed, heavy with exhaustion. The next, we are running through forests, speaking to the dead, flying above oceans. The shift is so complete that we never question it until we wake, and even then, a part of us lingers in the dream, shaken by how real it felt. This ability to accept impossible realities without question reveals a deeper truth. The brain is not concerned with truth. It is concerned with coherence. If the story holds together, if the simulation is smooth enough, we believe. In this sense, waking life may not be so different. We believe the world around us is stable because the brain makes it coherent. We do not question the continuity of objects, the persistence of identity, the solidity of time. But perhaps these, too, are dreams we share. Collective hallucinations shaped by evolution, stitched together by neurons, believed because they work. If dreams are nightly simulations, then waking life may be the grander dream, one that persists longer, one whose rules are tighter, but a dream nonetheless. Every night, as we fall asleep, we return to the engine that creates our world, its ability to weave without input, to create without evidence. Dreams are not interruptions of reality. They are windows into the very mechanism that builds it. And if the brain can generate entire worlds in the silence of sleep, then how can we be certain that the world we call waking is not built in the same way, sustained by the same hidden engine, waiting only for us to wake again? Reality feels secure only so long as the brain's simulation holds steady. But every so often, the machinery falters, and the seams of perception are exposed. In those cracks, we glimpse unsettling truths, that the world we experience is not the world itself, but a delicate model. When the simulation breaks down, reality bends, twists, and sometimes collapses altogether. Consider the hallucination, that most vivid betrayal of the senses. To the person who sees or hears it, there is no difference between hallucination and perception. Voices whisper from empty rooms. Figures emerge in shadowed corners, their faces sharp, their eyes alive. Entire landscapes unfold with the force of conviction, yet no one else can see them. To the observer, they are unreal. To the sufferer, they are undeniable. Schizophrenia, fevers, sensory deprivation, and psychedelic drugs can all tear open the veil, revealing a world built not on external input, but on the brain's predictions running unchecked. In those moments, it becomes clear that what we call reality is always subject to the same machinery. The hallucination is not an alien intrusion into the mind. It is perception itself, laid bare. Even without hallucinations, the simulation stumbles. Déjà vu arrives like a ghost, a sudden certainty that the present has already been lived. The street, the voice, the gesture, all feel familiar, though they cannot be. Neuroscience suggests a misfiring of circuits, a confusion between recognition and memory. But subjectively, it is a fracture in time itself, a glitch that makes the present feel like a memory. And just as mysteriously, it fades, leaving only the lingering unease of having glimpsed behind the curtain. Two people can witness the same event and recall entirely different details, both with complete conviction. Courts of law have been shaken by this truth. Memory is not a recording, but a reconstruction, shaped each time it is recalled, altered by emotion, expectation, and suggestion. A word planted in a question can create a memory that never existed. A photograph, misremembered, can reshape the past. What we trust as our most intimate connection to reality is, in fact, one of its most fragile illusions. Dreams sometimes bleed into waking life, creating yet another fracture. Sleep paralysis pins the body down while the mind hovers on the edge of dreaming. Figures loom in the dark, whispers crawl along the walls. Terror floods the chest. These experiences have been recorded across cultures as encounters with demons, spirits, or alien visitors. Today, neuroscience reveals them as the overlap of REM dreaming and waking awareness, a moment when the brain's two realities collide. Yet the terror feels no less real, the visitors no less present. The boundary between dream and waking dissolves in the liminal space of a trembling dawn. Psychedelics show this breakdown in technicolor. Under the influence of substances like LSD or psilocybin, the brain's predictive filters loosen, allowing raw sensory input to overwhelm perception. Colors blaze brighter than ever before. Patterns twist and breathe. Boundaries dissolve between self and world. The experience can be ecstatic or terrifying, but it always reveals the mind's central role in shaping reality. For when the filters shift, reality shifts with them. The drug does not change the world. It changes the way the brain constructs it. Neurological disorders, too, reveal the fragile architecture of experience. In Charles Bonnet syndrome, people who lose vision often begin to see vivid hallucinations. Faces, landscapes, even intricate patterns. The brain, deprived of input, fills the void with its own creations. In temporal lobe epilepsy, seizures can trigger intense mystical experiences, visions of light, encounters with presence, the sacred, the terrifying, the sublime, all summoned by the electrical storms of neurons. These are not mere curiosities. They are reminders that reality is always filtered through biology, and when the biology falters, so does the world. Even everyday perception wavers at the edges. After staring at a bright image, a negative afterimage lingers on blank walls. After spinning in circles, the world tilts and sways, even though it stands still. In moments of grief or exhaustion, we glimpse loved ones in crowds, hear their voices in the wind. These are not errors to the mind that experiences them. They are evidence that perception is not reality, but inference. When the inference falters, reality bends. The fragility of perception is perhaps most powerfully revealed in the body itself. Phantom limbs remind us that even our own flesh is a simulation. A soldier loses an arm, yet feels pain in fingers no longer there. The brain's map of the body remains, vivid and insistent. In mirror therapy, placing a mirror before the intact limb can trick the brain into believing the missing one is restored, relieving the pain. Reality adjusts not to the body itself, but to the brain's model of it. What we feel as physical certainty is, in truth, a simulation updated only when forced to by evidence. When reality breaks down, we are left with disquieting questions. If hallucinations feel real, if déjà vu bends time, if false memories shape our past, if phantom limbs extend our bodies into empty space, then what distinguishes reality from dream? Perhaps only consensus. We call hallucination unreal because it is not shared. We call waking life real because it is a dream held in common. But the mechanics are the same. The brain predicts, the brain constructs, the brain sustains. Whether in solitary visions or collective perception, reality is always the story told by neurons. The cracks in reality are not flaws to be dismissed. They are windows into the engine itself. When the simulation falters, we see what it has been doing all along, inventing, stitching, editing. We see that waking life is no more secure than dreaming, that the veil we trust is delicate, shifting, and easily torn. And in that realization lies both terror and liberation. For if reality can break down, then it is not fixed. It is not absolute. It is a creation. And like all creations, it may be remade. Long before brain scans traced the firing of neurons, long before laboratories measured the rhythms of sleep, humanity sensed the fragility of reality. Across cultures and centuries, thinkers, mystics, and storytellers all return to the same haunting suspicion, that the world is not as it appears, that life itself may be a dream. Today, science is beginning to illuminate what they only intuited, and the echoes between ancient wisdom and modern discovery are too striking to ignore. The philosophers of Greece gave the West its earliest language for this dilemma. Plato imagined a cave where prisoners, chained from birth, could see only shadows cast upon the wall. To them, those shifting silhouettes were the whole of reality. Only by breaking free, turning toward the fire, and then stepping out into the light, could they realize how thin their world had been. The allegory was meant as a meditation on ignorance and enlightenment, but beneath it lies a deeper recognition. Perception can deceive, and what we take for truth may be only shadows. Centuries later, René Descartes pressed this doubt to its sharpest edge. Sitting alone, he asked what could be trusted. Every sense, he realized, could be tricked. A stick looked bent in water. Dreams felt real while they lasted. Even logic itself might be tampered with. He imagined an evil demon, powerful enough to deceive him at every turn, constructing a false reality that he could never escape. From this abyss of doubt, Descartes built his philosophy, salvaging only one certainty, that in doubting, he was thinking, and in thinking, he existed. Yet the demon remained, a reminder that the entire structure of reality might be an elaborate illusion. But these questions were never confined to Europe. In India, the concept of Maya stretched back millennia, describing the world as a grand illusion, a veil that hides the deeper unity of existence. To live within Maya is to mistake the play of appearances for truth, to confuse the shifting shapes of dream with the essence beneath. In Buddhist thought, too, the mind was seen as the architect of experience, conjuring the world from perception and clinging to it as if it were permanent. The goal was not to prove the world false, but to awaken to its dreamlike quality, to see through the simulation and rest in the deeper fabric of reality. China, too, offered its own parable. The philosopher Zhuangzi once dreamt he was a butterfly. Upon waking, he wondered, was he a man who had dreamt of being a butterfly? Or a butterfly, now dreaming that he was a man? The story endures not because it has an answer, but because it pierces the heart of the problem. If dreams feel real and waking feels real, how can we ever distinguish them with certainty? For most of human history, these questions lingered in the realm of philosophy and spirituality. But in the last century, science has begun to probe them directly. Neuroscience reveals that perception is constructed, not received, that memory is reconstructed, that dreams are full simulations, not idle noise. Each discovery confirms what the ancients suspected. The world we experience is not the world itself. It is a model, a rendering, a dream painted by the brain. The study of illusions shows how little raw truth perception contains. The brain makes assumptions about light, shadow, perspective, and fills in gaps with its best guess. These guesses usually serve survival, but they prove that perception is a negotiation, not a mirror. Experiments in memory show the same fragility. Suggest a detail to a witness, and their memory bends to include it. Repeat a false story enough times, and the brain will weave it into personal history. We do not record the past. We dream it forward into the present. Even consciousness itself, the most intimate of realities, begins to look like a simulation. Some theories describe it as the brain's model of itself, a narrative constructed so we can predict our own actions, monitor our own existence. In this view, the self is not a solid entity, but a useful fiction, a dream the brain tells itself to hold the story together. The parallels to ancient teachings are striking. The Buddhists claim that the self is an illusion, the Hindu belief that individuality veils a deeper unity, the modern neuroscientific suspicion that I is a construct. These are different languages pointing to the same horizon. Modern physics, too, adds fuel to the fire. Quantum mechanics shows a world that is not fixed until observed. Particles that behave as waves until measured. Reality that seems to shimmer between potential and actuality. Some interpretations suggest that observation itself plays a role in shaping the outcome, echoing the ancient intuition that consciousness and reality are intertwined. Cosmology raises further questions. If the universe is infinite, might it contain endless variations, endless simulations, endless dreamers dreaming worlds into being? And then comes the most unsettling idea of all, the simulation hypothesis. Proposed in modern times by philosopher Nick Bostrom and echoed by voices in technology and physics, it asks whether our entire universe might be an artificial simulation, a dream not of neurons, but of machines. If civilizations advance far enough to create virtual realities indistinguishable from life, then the number of simulated realities would vastly outnumber the one base reality. Statistically, the argument goes, it is more likely that we are in a simulation than outside it. This is Descartes' demon reborn, not as a metaphysical speculation, but as a plausible consequence of technology. Whether or not the hypothesis is true, its power lies in what it reveals about our situation. For if we can imagine reality as a simulation, if we can even begin to create such simulations ourselves through virtual reality and artificial intelligence, then we admit that what we call real is not beyond question. It is fragile, contingent, possibly fabricated. Once again, ancient intuition meets modern possibility, and the distance between philosophy and science collapses. The convergence of these traditions, Plato's cave, Descartes' demon, Hindu Maya, Buddhist illusion, Zhuangzi's butterfly, and modern neuroscience, suggests that humanity has always known, in the whispers and visions, what science now confirms in experiments. That reality is not absolute. That perception is not truth. That life may be a dream sustained by the brain's simulation engine. The questions that haunted temples and monasteries now haunt laboratories and lecture halls. The mystery has not diminished. It has only deepened, given sharper edges, clearer language, stronger evidence. And still, the question remains the same. If reality is a dream, whose dream is it? The brain's? The universe's? A machine's? Or something deeper still, beyond the reach of neurons and algorithms alike? Ancient questions return in modern form, carrying the same weight, the same wonder, the same trembling uncertainty. We live in a dream, and only by glimpsing its edges can we begin to ask what lies beyond. For centuries, humanity's suspicion that reality might be an illusion lived mostly in philosophy, poetry, and myth. But in the last few decades, the question has taken on a new form, sharpened by technology and popular culture. The dream of reality has become not just a metaphor, but a possibility, that we are living in a simulation, not of our own minds, but of a machine. It is an idea that once seemed like science fiction, and yet it now hovers at the edge of science itself. The notion has a name that needs no explanation: the Matrix. When the film appeared at the end of the 20th century, its premise struck a chord deeper than mere entertainment. The story of human beings unknowingly trapped in a computer-generated world, their lives nothing more than code interpreted by the brain, was shocking and yet strangely familiar. It echoed Plato's cave, Descartes' demon, the dreamlike illusions of Eastern philosophy. What unsettled audiences was not only the spectacle of its imagery, but the whisper it carried. What if this is true? What if our own lives, with their loves and fears, their triumphs and losses, were part of a grand simulation, indistinguishable from reality itself? Philosophers soon gave the question a new frame. Nick Bostrom, in 2003, presented what became known as the simulation argument. He proposed that at least one of three possibilities must be true. First, civilizations like ours go extinct before they can develop the capacity to run vast simulations of conscious being. Second, civilizations reach that capacity but choose never to use it. Or third, they do develop it, and they do use it, and in that case, the number of simulated realities would vastly outnumber the one base reality. If the third possibility holds, then the odds are overwhelming that we ourselves are living in a simulation. The argument is unsettling because it does not rely on mysticism, but on probability. If even a single civilization anywhere in the universe achieves the ability to simulate worlds as rich as ours, then it is not unlikely, but almost inevitable, that countless such simulations exist. Each would feel as real to its inhabitants as this world feels to us. And if there are billions of simulations, but only one base reality, the odds that we are in that base reality shrink to almost nothing. What feels like solid ground becomes statistical quicksand. Some dismiss the idea as a thought experiment, a philosophical puzzle with no bearing on real life. but others take it seriously. Prominent scientists and technologists, from Elon Musk to researchers in physics and computer science, have argued that the simulation hypothesis is not only plausible, but perhaps the best explanation for the strangeness of our universe. Why do the laws of physics seem fine-tuned for life? Why does quantum reality appear probabilistic, as though rendered only when observed? Why does mathematics, a language of code, map so perfectly onto the workings of nature? To some, these are signs not of divine order, but of programming. We may be living in a universe designed, not discovered, yet the idea of the matrix within is not confined to philosophical speculation or technological prophecy. It speaks to the reality of our own minds. For even if no external machine is running our world, our brains themselves already are. Every perception we have, every memory we hold, every emotion that grips us is mediated by the neural code of firing patterns and electrical rhythms. We are, in a very real sense, already living in a simulation, not one imposed from without, but one generated from within. The dream is running in the folds of the cortex, the code written in the chemistry of synapses. This parallel is what makes the hypothesis so haunting. If we accept that the brain constructs reality, and we accept that machines might one day do the same, then the line between biology and technology dissolves. Consciousness may not depend on flesh at all. It may emerge wherever simulation is deep enough, wherever prediction is powerful enough, wherever reality is rendered with sufficient fidelity. If so, then simulated beings, like us, would never know the difference. To them, their world would feel as real as ours. To them, dreams and waking would blur, just as they do for us. Of course, objections remain. Some argue that consciousness cannot be simulated, that no amount of computation can produce the subjective experience of being. Others counter that we have no evidence it cannot, and indeed, no clear understanding of why it exists at all. Consciousness may be the greatest mystery, and until we solve it, we cannot dismiss the possibility that it can be engineered. The debate continues, unresolved, echoing across both philosophy and science. Yet even without resolution, the idea works on us. It reshapes how we see the world. If reality is a simulation, then what is meaning? What is freedom? Does it matter if our world is code rather than cosmos, so long as we live and love within it? For some, the idea is terrifying, stripping life of its authenticity. For others, it is liberating, suggesting that reality itself is more malleable than we imagined. If the world is code, perhaps we can rewrite it. And perhaps that is the true heart of the matrix within. Not whether an external machine is running our world, but the realization that we are already participants in constructing it. Our brains render the simulation. Our cultures build layers of meaning upon it. Our technologies now create digital worlds that mimic the one we know, blurring the boundary between lived reality and virtual space. Each step brings us closer to creating the very matrix we once feared, and in doing so, we begin to see that its outlines were always present, hidden in our own minds. The question then becomes not whether we live in a simulation, but what we do with the knowledge that we might. Do we despair, or do we awaken? Do we retreat from the possibility, or do we embrace the freedom it implies? For if reality is a dream, whether of neurons or of code, then perhaps the truest power lies in learning to dream it differently. There are moments when the dream of reality begins to tremble. when the machinery that holds it together loosens its grip. These moments often come not through breakdown or disorder, but through practices that human beings have pursued for millennia. Meditation, trance, near-death experiences, and profound states of stillness. They reveal something astonishing, that the brain, which so effortlessly convinces us of reality's solidity, can also let us glimpse beyond it. Awakening, in this sense, is not mystical in the way we once thought. It is neurological. It is what happens when the simulation engine of the brain begins to turn upon itself, revealing its own seams. In meditation, practitioners sit in silence, focusing their attention on breath, mantra, or emptiness itself. Over time, sensory noise quiets, thought slows, and the ordinary chatter of the mind fades. Brain scans show that during deep meditation, regions responsible for the sense of self, particularly the default mode network, grow less active. As activity wanes, so does the boundary between I and world. Practitioners report feeling dissolved into vastness, merging with space, time, and being itself. From a neurological perspective, what has happened is simple. The brain's predictive model of the self has relaxed, allowing perception to flow without the usual frame of separation. Yet subjectively, the experience is profound, a glimpse of reality without the filter of ego. It is awakening to the dreamlike quality of the self. Near-death experiences tell a similar story from the opposite edge of consciousness. Those who come close to death often report tunnels of light, overwhelming peace, encounters with loved ones or transcendent beings. To the experiencer, these are not hallucinations, but ultimate truths, etched into memory with clarity more vivid than life itself. Neuroscience suggests they arise when the brain, deprived of oxygen and flooded with neurochemicals, shifts into extreme predictive states. Visual cortexes fire in patterns that create tunnels of light. The boundaries of self collapse under chemical storms, giving rise to unity and transcendence. Whether one sees these experiences as biology or revelation, they demonstrate the same principle. The brain, under certain conditions, opens into realities beyond waking life, realities that feel no less real than the one we return to. Even more subtle practices reveal the same pattern. Monks in Tibetan traditions train in lucid dreaming, learning to maintain awareness as they pass into sleep. Their aim is not simply control over dreams, but recognition that both dreams and waking life are projections of the mind. Shamans enter altered states through rhythm, fasting, or plants, journeying into landscapes rich with symbols and beings. In every case, the brain is pushed to reveal its capacity to generate worlds and selves, to blur the line between perception and imagination. Modern science has begun to map these experiences. Functional MRI studies show how meditation alters connectivity in the brain, strengthening attention networks while quieting ego-driven circuits. Electroencephalograms record unusual rhythms in near-death states, bursts of gamma activity that might correlate with the visions described. Psychedelic research, once taboo, now reveals how substances like psilocybin and DMT dissolve the ordinary boundaries of self and world, allowing consciousness to expand beyond its usual confines. What once belonged to mysticism now sits under the gaze of neuroscience, yet the mystery is not diminished. If anything, it grows. For the real question is not how these states occur, but what they mean. If the self can dissolve into vastness, Was it ever as solid as we believed? If entire realities can unfold in visions and near-death journeys, who is to say that waking life is more authentic? Perhaps what we call awakening is simply the recognition that all states of consciousness are constructed, that reality is always a dream, and that the difference lies only in how tightly the brain holds its patterns. Some neuroscientists suggest that enlightenment, that elusive goal sought across cultures, may be the stabilization of this recognition. Living with awareness that the self is a model, the world is a model, and that behind them lies something the brain cannot capture. Not an end to the dream, but an awakening within it. From this perspective, spiritual practice is not about escaping reality, but about perceiving the machinery of perception itself. There are those who argue that such states are delusion, the byproducts of neurons misfiring, yet dismissing them misses the point. For even if they are illusions, they reveal the fundamental truth, that the brain can make realities feel utterly real, whether in meditation, death, or waking life. And if it can do so in those states, why should waking life be different? The dreamlike quality is universal. Awakening is simply noticing it. The neuroscience of awakening, then, is not about explaining away transcendence. It is about understanding how the simulation engine of the brain creates all experience, and how, in rare states, it allows us to glimpse its workings directly. It is about recognizing that the boundaries we cling to, self and other, dream and waking, life and death, are drawn by the mind itself. And once we see this, we cannot unsee it. The world remains, but it shimmers, fragile, beautiful, and uncertain. Like a dream, we know we are dreaming. For as long as humans have questioned reality, they have also tried to shape it. From the earliest cave paintings, flickering in torchlight, to the vast digital worlds of today, we have always sought to build dreams outside our own minds. What once belonged solely to the brain's simulation engine is now echoed in our technology. Step by step, we are learning to create realities of our own, to weave illusions so convincing that the line between dream and waking begins to dissolve. The engine that once lived only in neurons now extends into circuits, screens, and code. The story begins with the simplest tools of imagination: a painted handprint on stone, a story told around firelight. Both are acts of simulation, attempts to make others see what is not physically present. These early dreams were crude, but they carried the seed of something larger, the desire to share realities. As centuries passed, we built theaters, novels, paintings, cathedrals, all of them spaces where minds could step into visions crafted by other minds. Each was a prototype of the engine we now build with machines. Photography captured reality in light. Cinema brought it into motion. And suddenly, illusions were no longer confined to imagination. A darkened theater became a portal, where shadows of light moved and spoke, stirring emotions as if they were real. The brain accepted them with little resistance. When sound arrived, then color, then digital editing, the fidelity of illusion grew sharper. Millions could sit together, their brains aligned to the same constructed world, weeping for fictional characters, fearing monsters that never existed. The simulation expanded, scaled, refined. But the greatest leap came with computation. The invention of the computer was the birth of a new simulation engine, one that could not only record, but generate, not only represent, but interact. Video games transformed screens into landscapes we could enter, avatars we could control. At first crude, then sophisticated, these digital worlds became laboratories of imagination, where entire generations learned to spend hours inside realities that did not exist outside code. For the brain, the difference mattered little. The same circuits of emotion, attention, and memory lit up, whether the threat was a predator in the forest or a pixelated creature on a screen. Virtual reality took the next step. With a headset and sensors, the brain's predictive machinery is fed new signals, convincing it that what it sees and hears is the world. Even when the body knows it stands in a room, the mind feels it stands on a cliff, or flies through space, or holds objects that vanish the moment the headset is lifted. The engine we are building exploits the same principles the brain uses itself: coherence, immersion, prediction. If the signals match closely enough, the brain accepts them as real. It cannot do otherwise. Artificial intelligence accelerates this process further. Machines now generate images that never existed, voices that speak words never uttered, faces that look into the camera with eyes that belong to no one. Deepfakes blur the line between truth and fabrication, forcing us to question whether our memories of the world outside the screen are any more trustworthy than those within. Algorithms craft feeds of information so tailored to each person that no two individuals inhabit the same informational reality. We live in overlapping dreams, curated by code, reinforced by prediction, dividing societies into parallel worlds. And at the horizon looms the most intimate step of all: direct interfaces between brain and machine. Experiments in brain-computer connections already allow paralyzed individuals to move robotic arms with thought, to type words without speech, to communicate through neural signals alone. As these technologies evolve, they will not stop at assistance. They will become conduits for new realities, allowing experiences to be written directly into the brain's simulation engine. A future may come when sight, sound, touch, even memory itself can be fabricated not through screens, but through impulses delivered directly to the cortex. In that moment, the boundary between external simulation and internal perception will vanish altogether. What does this mean for the question of reality? If the brain already constructs the world we know, and we now possess the tools to shape what it constructs, then reality becomes a collaborative project between biology and technology. Dreams are no longer confined to sleep. They spill into waking, engineered by machines that know the brain's language of prediction and coherence. Our ancestors painted on stone to bring visions to life. We now paint on neurons. The implications are staggering. Entire societies may one day live in realities of choice, crafted worlds more appealing than the one outside. Work, love, play, all could be conducted in spaces with no physical counterpart. The simulation would become the stage of life itself, and the waking world might fade into a backdrop, a scaffolding for dreams more vivid than matter. Whether this is liberation or entrapment remains to be seen. For if reality is a dream we build, then the question becomes, who controls the engine? Who decides which dream is shared? Already, we see glimpses of both promise and peril. Virtual therapy uses immersive worlds to treat phobias, guiding patients through simulations that retrain their fears. Yet disinformation spreads through fabricated videos and false narratives, undermining trust in shared truth. A headset can transport a patient to calm landscapes, easing pain, or trap someone in addictive loops of stimulation. The engine we are building is neither good nor evil. It is a mirror, reflecting the choices of those who wield it. And perhaps the most profound realization is this: the engine we are building is not separate from the one within us. They are extensions of the same principle, two halves of a single process. The brain dreams reality into being, and now our machines dream alongside it, amplifying, reinforcing, challenging. The question is no longer whether reality is a dream, but whose dream we will inhabit: our own, our culture's, or one written by code. In the end, this convergence to create is our nature. To simulate is our destiny. We are no longer just participants in the dream of reality. We are its architects, shaping it with every story, every technology, every line of code. The fragile veil that once separated waking life from dream grows thinner with each invention, and the world we step into tomorrow may be one we have written ourselves. There was a time when dreams were private and waking life was shared. One belonged to the solitude of night, the other to the consensus of day. But in the world we now inhabit, the two are no longer so neatly divided. Dreams spill outward into waking life, while waking life dissolves into engineered visions. The seams between the two grow faint, and reality itself begins to blur. We live in an age when illusions are no longer confined to the mind, but are built into the fabric of society. The dream has broken free of the skull, and it walks among us. The internet was the first great stage of this merging. With a screen and a signal, one could step into worlds that existed nowhere in matter, but everywhere in imagination. Identities could be rewritten, friendships forged with voices that never met in flesh, entire communities built from nothing but code. For many, these digital spaces became as real as the towns they lived in. Their lives split between physical presence and virtual existence. The boundary was already crumbling, though we hardly noticed. Social media deepened the fracture. Platforms crafted endless feeds of images, stories, and filtered truths, each tuned to the desires of the individual. The result was not a single shared reality, but millions of overlapping dreams, each user inhabiting a world shaped by algorithms invisible to them. Two people standing side by side might scroll through the same platform, yet inhabit entirely different realities, each convinced of their own truth. The collective dream splintered into fragments, each reinforced by endless prediction. Augmented reality pushes this further still. With phones and glasses, we overlay digital layers on the physical world. Directions on a street, creatures on a sidewalk, furniture that is not there. Soon, these overlays will become seamless, indistinguishable from matter. Children already grow up chasing digital beings across their neighborhoods, believing in their presence as firmly as in a dog or a bird. The world is becoming a canvas where waking life and dream life are painted together, and the brain does not distinguish between them. It cannot. Deepfakes reveal the danger with startling clarity. A voice that was never spoken, a face that never acted, a moment that never happened can now be generated with perfect fidelity. To the brain, which trusts the coherence of sight and sound, these fabrications are indistinguishable from memory. The result is a crisis of trust, where evidence itself can no longer anchor reality. We have entered a time when seeing is no longer believing, when hearing is no longer knowing. The dream has claimed the symbols we once relied on to define the real. And then there are virtual worlds so immersive that the body forgets itself. A headset lowers, sensors hum, and the brain is bathed in signals that replace the ordinary stream of life. Within minutes, the mind accepts the illusion. You are standing on a ledge above a city. You are floating in space. You are meeting people who exist only as avatars. The body reacts as though it were true. The stomach churns. The palms sweat. The heart races. The brain's simulation engine does not care whether the signals come from photons or pixels, from sound waves or code. If they are coherent, if they match prediction, they are real enough. Already, there are those who prefer these constructed worlds to the physical one. Gamers spend thousands of hours living alternate lives. Workers attend meetings in virtual office. Couples meet, love, and marry through avatars. What once seemed extraordinary is becoming ordinary, the dream woven into the fabric of the everyday. The question is no longer whether reality and dream collide, but how completely they will merge. This collision does not erase the power of waking life, but it changes its nature. A photograph of a meal may matter more than the taste itself. A moment lived for the camera may feel more real than the moment lived without it. We curate ourselves as digital selves, simulations that walk beside our bodies, often more influential than the bodies themselves. Reality now has layers, and we move between them without pause. The self becomes multiplied, distributed, dreamlike. The consequences are profound. Politics, once rooted in shared facts, is now contested in a battlefield of overlapping simulations. Truth is weaponized, narratives compete, and entire populations live in different dreams. Identity itself becomes fluid, shaped by digital avatars as much as by physical bodies. Children raised in augmented and virtual realities may never know a world without blended layers, their sense of truth forever different from ours. What feels like illusion to one generation becomes ordinary to the next. Yet there is beauty here too. Illness can be eased by virtual landscapes that soothe pain. Artists craft impossible worlds where imagination breathes freely. Isolated voices find community in digital spaces that dissolve distance. Dreams and waking life collide not only in deception, but in creativity, in connection, in the endless expansion of what it means to be human. Still, the collision raises an unsettling question. If reality is defined by coherence, and coherence can now be engineered, then what anchors us? When everything can be simulated, when every signal can be fabricated, what distinguishes the dream from the real? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps the distinction itself will dissolve, and we will live in a continuum of realities, shifting between them as easily as we shift between waking and sleep. The danger is not that we will lose reality, but that we will lose the need to ask what it is. The brain has always been a simulation engine, conjuring reality from signals. Now, with our machines, we extend that power outward, creating shared dreams so convincing that the world itself becomes negotiable. We stand at the threshold of an era when waking life and dream will collide so completely that the question of which is which may vanish. And when that day comes, we may find that the only reality left is the one we choose to believe in. What if the greatest secret of existence is not hidden in the stars, nor buried deep in matter, but within the folds of the mind itself? What if the world we cling to, the world we call real, has always been a dream? Fragile, shimmering, yet shared by billions of dreamers at once. From the first breath we take, the brain begins its work, spinning signals into landscapes, weaving moments into time, conjuring selves out of silence and memories, dreams and hallucinations, myths and philosophies, science and technology. We have seen the cracks in perception, the fragility of time, the fluidity of the self. We have glimpsed how ancient voices and modern laboratories echo one another, whispering the same truth, that reality is not given, it is made. It is a tapestry woven each instant by the most astonishing simulation engine in the known universe. And in its weaving, we live, we love, we suffer, we hope. Perhaps it does not matter whether this world is a neural hallucination, a cosmic illusion, or a computer's code. What matters is that within it, we find meaning. Within it, we build beauty. Within it, we awaken to the possibility that life is not fixed, but flowing, not certain, but open, not absolute, but endlessly becoming. To call it a dream is not to diminish it. It is to recognize its wonder, that from nothing but darkness and silence, the brain creates light, color, sound, and the fragile miracle of being. And so the journey circles back to its beginning. Each night we fall into dreams, and each morning we awaken into a greater one. The veil may never lift fully, the truth may never be known, yet there is power in the question itself. For to ask, is your reality a dream, is to open the door to awakening, not escape from the dream, but awareness within it. Awareness that frees us to walk more gently, to hold more lightly, to marvel more deeply at the strange, fleeting vision we call life. We are dreamers, all of us. Dreamers caught in a web of neurons. Dreamers building worlds with machines. Dreamers gazing at the stars and wondering if even they are part of the dream. And if one day we awaken, if the veil falls away, perhaps we will discover that the dream was not a prison, but a gift. The very fabric of our existence, fragile and fleeting, yet enough to contain all the wonder of the universe. Until then, we walk together in the dream. And perhaps that is all reality has ever been.